I just want to share before I put it on my phone. And I see.
Yes.
So they speaking using these mics? Where they speaking? Yes.
Where are they speaking? Will they be coming to the podium?
Yeah. No, no, no.
Because we have all mics.
All the mics are only, all mics by you.
Recorded.
Right.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ayola George. I am the PRO here at DOMLEC. On behalf of the Board of Directors, Management, and staff of DOMLEC, Dominica Electricity Services Limited, I thank you for joining us today at this important press conference as we address matters relating to the geothermal transition project, as well as recent service interruption, which we've all experienced, and of course the ongoing efforts to improve energy stability across Dominica. We especially want to thank the members of the media who are here. Thank you for your presence and your continued partnership in ensuring that the public receives timely, accurate, and balanced information. We recognize that the recent outages and service disruptions has caused some frustration, some inconvenience, of course, and concern for many customers and businesses across the island. And so today's engagement is part of our commitment to being transparent and to sharing information with you as we work through this significant transition period. So to begin, I will start with a member of our board, Mr. Samuel Raphael. He's a board director here at DOMLEC, who will be sharing some remarks with you this morning. So welcome, Mr. Raphael. Welcome, Mr. Raphael.
Thank you, Ayuel. Good morning to the members of the media that's here with us. Pleasant good morning. And we have some of our key DOMLEC personnel here. We have with me the general manager. We also have Mr. Daryl Rimple. He is the head of engineering, transmission, and distribution. And we have with us, not necessarily in any order of importance, but just naming the folks, we have Mr. Dave Stamp, that's in charge of generation. And then we have Mr. Felix Julian. He's one of the innovative guys at DOMLEC, and he's in charge of business development. And as the PRO said, I am a member, I'm a director of DOMLEC, one of the members of the board. And the board of directors saw fit to have us represented here today and to speak directly to you, our 39,000 customers. We have 34,000 residential customers and upwards of 4,000 plus commercial customers, to speak directly to you on the transition that's taken place from the fossil fuel, the diesel generators that we've been using up to decades, and we're transitioning to geothermal, at least a significant part of that. And I'll go into some of the details. But so this is what this press session was designed to do. We were supposed to come out a couple weeks ago, and then last week I had to travel and so on. And so I'm here today to discuss this on behalf of the board. I'm speaking on behalf of the board and on behalf of the company. And so we just want to share with you this information. But as the PRO said, I really think it's important, or we as a board think it's important that we first, coming from DOMLEC, really apologize to the public, for the inconvenience that you've gone through. I don't want to put any excuses on it. You are paying customers, you expect to turn on your switch, you expect continuous power, and you have not been having that. And we will explain some of the reasons why. It's not anyone's deliberate fault per se, but that's what you've had to go through, and we really want to apologize for that. In that we, as a power company, have not been able to deliver what you have contracted us to do, and what you've been paying for, and we're seeking to do better, and we will talk to you about that. Part of that interruption, the recent interruptions, at least that you've been getting, can stem to the transfer from our normal operating system to the geothermal system. The geothermal plant is a brand new plant, and the geothermal plant is really put in place to give you even more stable electricity because, not too long ago we used to have a term that we are all familiar with, load shedding, and Dominicans had been, going through a very difficult time with unstable electricity with the old outdated plants, and we've now contracted with Ormat, the Dominica Geothermal Company, to supply DOMLEC with energy from a brand new plant. So we would expect it to be steady going forward, and this is what it will do. I'll speak a little more to that. But in the transition, we've had some hiccups, and that is part of the reason why you've had a one-day island-wide power outage, and we've just had some really tough days. And so I'm not blaming anyone for that, but going back, that's the root of the majority of those issues, along with other issues. And as quickly as we can fix those issues can be fixed, then you will have even more stable electricity than you've had in the past. And so I just wanted to let the public know that, and to ask, if not for your patience, your understanding. I think some people may be out of patience now, but at least we try to explain uh, for understanding. As the PRO said, we're not here, and I'm not here on behalf of the board to whitewash anything. We're just here to talk straight facts. And so we want to apologize for that. And so again, we'll go into some of the DOMLEC officials will speak more on that. So getting that out, again, geothermal, it's here. I can tell you that we've had many skeptics, and I can raise my hand at some point in the journey. If you weren't a skeptic about this geothermal thing that you've heard about for so long and hadn't seen or felt, then you're very special. But many of us, and even those listening in media land, would know that this is something that we kind of talked about, we heard people talk about, and we wondered if it would ever really happen. Well, it's happened, and it's here now. The geothermal plant is operating. It's been operating for the better part of a month or so, and they keep testing and doing things with the system, but it's here. And what the geothermal plant will do is it will produce 10 megawatts of power. And I just want you to kind of understand in practical terms, what does 10 megawatts of power mean? Effectively, half of the energy in our electrical grid will come from this geothermal plant. That's huge. When you add that to about 25% thereabout of the electricity in the grid that comes from hydroelectric, we're talking about 75% of the energy on our national grid coming from renewable energy. That, folks, is big news. And that's why I think the board saw fit. And I personally, I wanted to come out because I'm in the tourism business. I'm in the ecotourism business. I'm excited about that. And Dominicans abroad and at home, we should be excited that we are indeed a leader now in the area of renewable energy, less carbon emission, cleaner energy, less pollution, and less dependence on foreign petroleum purchases. You know what's been happening recently in the Gulf and in other places, and the spike of you don't know whether the petroleum is going to be $50 a barrel or $130 a barrel. And ultimately that comes back and affects us in our fuel surcharge to you, our customers. And so we're happy to reduce the dependence on fossil fuel and to rely on the natural energy that comes from the earth in Dominica. So that's huge. So number one, what this is going to ultimately mean is, because we have a brand new plant and we're not dealing with the 30 and 35-year-old diesel plants that much, we can mothball some of the older ones. Once we get the hiccup period over with. And we do not know how long this is going to take because we're not in control of that. And even the people in control of that are doing their best. But we have interruptions. We're probably going to have some more interruptions. As soon as we get this period sorted out, you will be able to expect more reliable, steady energy. That's one. So the consistent, steady energy, that's one of the benefits you're going to get from that. The second benefit is that it's now cleaner energy, and for us, especially in tourism and positioning the island of Dominica for economic development as a nature island of not just the Caribbean or the world, this is huge. 75% of our energy now will come from renewable energy. That's a big thing to wave a flag about. That's number two. But for you, the customers, probably the most important thing is what is it going to cost you? Does that mean that it's going to cost me more? You have a new plant. Am I going to have to pay for it? So I would like to clarify this because there's a lot of, information that's being passed first, second, third hand. And by the time it passes the rum shop, the information changes. Yeah. So we want to hear it straight from the company. This initiative is designed to reduce your electricity bill. So the actuaries have looked at it, the accountants have looked at it, looked at all the numbers, and they've determined with a high level of certainty that your electric bill is going to go down. I'm not just going to be general, I'll be very specific. So we have 35,000 domestic users. Your electricity bill, when this settles and the price of oil settles, because we still have 25% of the electricity will come from diesel. Once things settle down, your electricity bill will go down 17%. Very specific. So if your electricity bill at the end of the month, if you conserve and you only have a $100 electricity bill, it goes to $83. And if your electricity bill as a high user, maybe you're a small business, the rate for small businesses is a little different. If you run a small business, it would be, I think, about maybe 12% reduction. So if your electricity bill is $1,000 a month, you should expect to pay 900, a little less than that a month. That's significant savings. And if you're a larger employer like my business, and I'm really excited about that, our electricity bill is huge. $50,000 a month. Imagine we expect to get a 10% reduction on that. So at all levels, this is going to reduce the electricity bill of every DOMLEC consumer. And I just wanted to be clear on behalf of the board and on the company to get that out to you, the public, that this is what that's coming and this is what that is so exciting about this. So when you look at the fuel surcharge, when you put that in, when you put all the cost of everything in the pot, because that's what you pay at the end of the month, our consumers, you're going to find that your electricity bill is going to go down. So this, we think, is something to be excited about, along with the reduction in the dependence on fossil fuel from outside to create a more stable grid with the new equipment, and along with the reduction in the emissions. We think this is a win-win-win for Dominica, and we would like to just get ahead and begin to promote this as something very positive for Dominica. Now, before we get to that point to where everything is stable, we don't know. We don't know because DOMLEC is not producing, DOMLEC is not generating the electricity. DOMLEC is purchasing the electricity from the government of this subsidiary of the Geothermal Power Company of Dominica. Now, Geothermal Power Company of Dominica, what's that? The government of Dominica entered into a purchase agreement, design, and they operate, and then they transfer it after 25 years to a geothermal company. These people specialize in geothermal energy. It's a company, Ormat. They've been operating for some 60 years. It's a US-based company. It started in Israel, and they operate in over 30 countries, many, many plants. So it's new to us in Dominica, but don't be afraid. It's not a new thing. It's something that's been ongoing. And these are the people that set up this plant, and they're going to amortize their return on it for the next 25 years. So we know what it's going to cost us. It's a fixed cost. And as a result of that, we can pass the savings on to you, the consumers. And after 25 years, guess what? It is turned over to the government of Dominica. And you may even realize even the reduced costs. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but by that time, they will have transferred the know-how to operate this plant to the people of Dominica. And by that time, we'll be able to operate our own geothermal plant. But in the interim, when ORMAT is operating it, they have skilled technicians, the global workforce. That's who's operating the plant. They have tremendous experience at it. So we can expect once everything, the T's get crossed and the I's get dotted in terms of launching this plant, that we would expect to have good stability on the grid. Now, we run an above ground grid. We have power lines. Sometimes you have a tree that may interfere with something. Sometimes you have some other aspect of the transmission system. And we will continue to have some outages of that, but that should be the area that we have the outages. In terms of the power production, we should have very little interruption there. So as a result of that, you will have a greatly reduced amount of interruption on that. Yeah. So I just wanted to lay out some of these things to you, the public, and again to thank you for your patience. And if not your patience, if your patience is out, we say thank you for your understanding at least. We still have that of what it is that we're doing and what we're going through. You know, next month's bill, you don't expect to see a huge drop. I just want to be clear. I'm not here to bring you good news. I'm here to tell the truth. Because come next month, you still partially, a lot of it is still on the diesel plants, and you're going to have this fuel surcharge because guess what's happening? We're buying the fuel and it's gone. You see the news, it's gone through the roof. And so then this month, 2 months until things stabilize, you're going to get some kind of fluctuation. Don't say, but Mr. Raphael stood here and told us that, you know, look our bill this month. Let's start looking medium term, maybe closer to the end of the year, later on this year. I'd rather tell you that it improves before than to give you that false hope that right away. But this is what that's coming. You're going to see a reduction in your expenses, and this is going to go well, I think, and benefit the people of Dominica. Yes, so I don't want to delay um, this conference too much. This is what we're here to talk about. I'm going to yield to the general manager. I don't know if he wishes to add anything, or if Iola, if you want to go to questions, because I think that you will introduce him, okay, and we'll take it from there. Yeah. But thank you all so much for your indulgence, and the media. Thanks so much for coming out. And hopefully, I got a little whisper from some of our friends that said we need to do this more often. We will, you know, encourage us, and we will continue to do that more often and talk to you. We like to talk to you. We need to talk to you. And again, we don't need to be prompted by anyone to have to talk to you. Yeah. So we want to thank you for your indulgence on this.
Thank you so much, Director Raphael. Thanks for your remarks and providing a perspective on on the strategic importance of the geothermal transition, and of course, DOMLEC's commitment to the people of Dominica during this evolving period. I also appreciate your sharing the exciting benefits. Of course, we all are customers. You mentioned the large electricity bill and the savings you expect to benefit from the implementation of geothermal. And I myself am looking forward to that. So thank you for sharing these benefits with us. We'll now hear from DOMLEC's General Manager, Mr. Dwayne Sinak. He'll provide an overview on the company's operational response and our ongoing efforts to maintain service stability while supporting this historic transition. Mr. Sinak.
All right, thank you, Iola. Good morning. Let me recognize the board of directors and management of DOMLEC staff. All right, before I start off and get into provide some context into the outages that we have been experiencing, I just want to acknowledge the frustration that customers have been going through. All right, we understand that in this day and age, electricity is just not another service. It's an essential one. and persons rely on it for multiple things, right? It's not just something where you need to run your refrigerator, keep things cool, right? You have persons working from home, you have persons in different industries. Uh, there are multiple things that persons rely on electricity for, and we sincerely apologize for the outages that have been experienced. All right. Now, before we get into the outages and some of the major ones that we have suffered, I would like to just provide a status of the project so that at least we have that context going into better understanding the outages that we experience. All right. Now, the geothermal transition that Director Raphael spoke to, it involves two main projects. There's the construction of the plant itself, the geothermal plant, and there's the construction of a transmission system that is going to be used to transmit the power from the geothermal plant to our load centers and to our customers. Now, in terms of where we are, the construction of the plant has been completed, and we're into the commissioning and testing phase of the project. The transmission system is partially completed. There was an accelerated approach that we took to ensure that together with the plant, we have a means of getting power from the geothermal plant in the Roseau Valley down to Fonkole, our load center. Part of that is completed. There are still two additional key elements of that project to be completed, and that's substations at Trafalgar and Padu, right, where the line will interconnect. And that in itself will strengthen the system, bring more reliability to the system, right? There's also another line, transmission line, that has to be constructed. That's separate and apart from the line that exists now. That line in particular that I'm referring to that has been completed, that's the line that runs through the Roseau Valley, uh, along Federation Drive, into Goodwill, and into Fonkole. Persons may have been inconvenienced by the construction of that line. It required excavation of the main road and the laying of the conductors and so. But that line has been completed, it's constructed, and it's being used to export power as we speak. Right. So that's basically an overview of the status of the project, right? The other important thing to understand here is that the entity that is constructing or constructed and will operate the plant is different to the contractors of the transmission system. That's an entirely different contractor that is developing the transmission system. And we are working with all of them to bring this together and integrate everything to be able to deliver safe and reliable power. One of the other key elements of this project is the integration of a battery storage energy system, right? This project came about as a lease from the government of Dominica. The BESS was financed by the government of Dominica and the UAE, and this battery energy storage system was leased to DOMLEC, and it has been in operation from essentially May last year, June last year, and it's a key element of this project in terms of supporting stability and reliability of the system. And as I said, all of this is important to build the context into explaining the outages that we suffered and why. All right. Now, at the heart of all of this, and not to repeat what has been said by Director Raphael, but essentially where we are in terms of installing over 50% of what Dominica demands for electricity, that is significant, right? And we spoke the price stability and the lowering of prices. But one significant thing that cannot be left out is the energy independence, right? And yes, probably to ease into it, it might have been well placed to install a smaller system instead of 10 megawatts, aim for probably something that contributes 25%, right? But Dominica has a goal to supply all of its electricity from renewable energy sources by 2030. And in order to do that, you need to approach this aggressively because 2030 is just a few years away, right? So it's an aggressive drive. 10 megawatts on a system that barely peaks at 20 is very aggressive, but it all bodes well in order to achieve that goal of being able to supply all of our energy from renewable energy sources. And with that, one of the key things that brings is energy independence, right? And we understand what is happening in the world now, the impact on fuel prices. Energy independence, relying on indigenous sources, not having to rely on imported fuel, is a major benefit, right? And this is one of the things that this project delivers. All right. Now, to get into the outages that we experienced, there were two recent major outages that affected the entire island. We had a total system shutdown, right? And that was a result of the geothermal plant being in operation. It was approaching its maximum capacity of 10 megawatts. It was 9 plus megawatts in operation. Now, one of the true benefits of that when that happened is our Fonkole plant, the diesel plant, was totally off. It was shut down. And that there is testament to the benefit that geothermal brings, that we were able to stop our main diesel plant, which burns diesel and relies solely on the indigenous power, right? The local resource, right? So that bodes well. And not only for persons in terms of the stability in price, the energy independence, but it has a major impact on the environment. Noise pollution, air pollution has been reduced. Persons in Fonkole were wondering, do we have a major problem? Why is Fonkole not online? And that happened over a period of a few days. Now, unfortunately, while that system was in operation, operating close to the maximum load, the transmission line that I spoke about earlier, it tripped. So there was not a means to get that power, that 9 plus megawatts, into the load centers and out to the communities. And we have a system that is operating at the time, in one case around 13 megawatts, another case around 16 or so megawatts. You essentially lose between 60 to 70% of what is driving the system, what is holding up the system. And as a result of that loss, the system cascaded very quickly. I mentioned that the BESS was installed to support the system. Unfortunately, the system cascaded so quickly that the BESS basically stayed off and was not able to support the system. A lot of the backup systems or protection systems that we have in place, when we lose generation, we shed load automatically. The cascade of the system just happened too rapidly for those systems to respond. So that is something we have reviewed, we're learning from it, and we're aiming to put things in place to better respond to the loss of that magnitude of power. That's essentially why we suffered the island-wide outage on the two occasions, April 25th and May 1st. We had another incident again on the 4th of May. At this time, the plant was operating at a lower capacity, a lower load level. It tripped. We had another incident, and this time we didn't suffer an island-wide outage. The battery energy storage system was able to win, and it responded as expected and was able to support the system. Unfortunately, we lost some customers to the south. The line running to the south of the island was shed, and we lost some of the customers there. Now, apart from these outages that have been related to the testing and commissioning of the geothermal plant, there were other outages affecting customers, partly due to, one, the transition and preparatory works when we were transitioning the systems and reconfiguring the systems. Apart from that, we also had some outages recently related to vegetation issues, as well as some capacity constraints at our Fonkole plant, where we had to to some load shedding both yesterday and so again, we apologize to customers for those outages. And of course, we had some weather-related outages the last weekend in April that mostly affected the East Coast, right? So I will close here and we'll take questions from the media. But before I end, I would just like to again apologize to customers for the inconveniences caused, and we do ask for your understanding. As Director Raphael said, you're probably out of patience now, and that's totally understandable. But we do ask for your understanding as we transition to energy independence and greater price stability from the implementation of geothermal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. As our general manager just mentioned, we'll open the floor to questions from the media. As we begin, please, I'll provide a mic to you. State your name and media house before you ask the question. Try to stay on topic. I just want to also mention again that we have present, in addition to Director Raphael, General Manager Sinha, Daryl Darampo, who is the manager of the Engineering, Transmission and Distribution Department, ET&D at DOMLEC, as well as Generation Manager Dave Stamp, and of course, Business Development Engineer and also Tariff Team Lead, Felix Julia. Okay.
Thank you. Can I do that, please? Customers are still trying to wonder, one, why did it take DOMLEC such a long time to come to the public to inform them of the quote-unquote the problems that you are saying that you encountered? For example, the first major power outage, one would have thought that very quickly DOMLEC would have approached the public as it relates to that. That took a long time. My second point also, since you have geothermal, why do you still have to do load shedding? That is something the public still wants to know. Can you please address those matters?
All right, thank you for the questions. Well, we do acknowledge our deficiency in our PR and coming to the press earlier. One of the shortcomings that we realize is we depend heavily on social media to communicate. And going forward, we will make use of the other mediums of communication, the radio and so on, and just ensure that we're out there much more and share with the public, right? So basically, I'm saying lesson learned in terms of the mediums that are available and what we take advantage of and how we get our messages out to the public and not solely rely on the Facebook and the other social media avenues for sharing information. In regards to the other question, with geothermal available and incidents of load shedding, as we mentioned, the status of the project, the plant is in its commissioning phase, and it's not on every day running 24/7. So there are times when it is off, maybe to correct something that was found, or just basically to address some sort of optimization or so on. So those things are still ongoing, and from time to time you take it out. Unfortunately, the past 2 days when the plant was off, we had some other incidents that occurred at our Fonkole plant, and that reduced the capacity and our ability to meet the demand those 2 particular days. So that's the reason. right? So the geothermal, just to reiterate, the geothermal is not always on since we first announced that geothermal is being commissioned and on the system. And so those 2 particular days, it was offline. And at the same time, we had some issues at Fonkole requiring us to shed load in order to not have a total system failure, but basically to balance just to balance the system and meet the demand.
Yeah, good morning. Curtis Matthew from DBS Radio. I heard this morning from the board member, Sam Raphael, that when the geothermal is fully installed, that we could see customers could see on average 17% decrease. Basically, it's just about 17% decrease in what they pay. He was not able to say when that would come into effect, while the geothermal is still being worked on and so on. But could you give consumers an idea when will that happen? 17%, I think they're interested in knowing the 70% decrease in what they pay. When will that come on stream? As we know, we're still working on geothermal. And finally, is there anything in place at this moment to determine that we will see less interference based on what you're seeing right now in terms of power outages? Is there anything in place to suggest that very soon we could well see less interference of these outages? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for the question. In terms of when customers can start seeing the impact of geothermal on our bills, I would say already, despite it has been marginal, uh, it has been impacting. We would have put something out in regards to what we would see for the April bills. And despite geothermal only contributed 6% of the energy that was consumed in March, that is still a contribution. And what it does is help displace some of the diesel that has been used. In April, we were able to receive a bit more power from the plant. And so that contributes as well to offsetting diesel, offsetting the cost of diesel. Of course, we're nowhere close to where we want to be in terms of having geothermal online continuously for most of the period going to the end of the year. Of course, it requires maintenance as any other thing, and will be off from time to time, but essentially we expect them to be operating fully month on month, with the exception of a few days outages and so going forward. So really the impact of the prices will be felt once the commissioning of the plant is completed and it's fully operational. Now we expect commissioning to be completed to the end of this month. We're in May, yes, sorry. So we expect commissioning to be completed by the end of this month. And going into June, we expect most of our energy to be delivered by geothermal, right? Of course, again, we're still in the testing phases. And as we move forward, things will happen. Of course, to put on record, we have learned from the lessons, from the experiences before. We have learned lessons there. Some of it to correct, there's still not something in place. For example, if we were to lose the plant at 10 megawatts, there's still some workarounds and engineering solutions that we're reviewing to put in place. So, I want to go on record and say if that were to happen again, it's likely that we might see in the short term, we may see a similar event, but the issues that have affected the system, we have corrected it. And again, that's why I give an update on the status of the system in terms of the build out of the transmission system. That build out is not completed, right? On the two occasions when we suffered island-wide outages, we essentially lost the transmission line. The transmission line tripped, and we were unable to receive that power. With the full build out of the transmission system, there will be much more redundancy. So one line trips, power will simply flow via the other line, and there wouldn't be interruption to the customers. So that is to come with the full build out of the transmission system. All right, but we'll keep persons updated as to the progress with the commissioning of the plant as we progress and become more stable and when we get into full operation.
What is causing the line? Yes, radio. What is actually causing the line to trip?
Right. Now the line in question that we're speaking to, and again, just to give that context, this is the underground line, right? So that line runs from the geothermal plant in the Roseau Valley, underground up to where we refer to as the Trafalgar Cliff. When you stand at the Trafalgar Falls Welcome Center and you look up, you see DOMLEC has a pipeline running down that cliff face there, right? So the line runs up to that point, it's underground. Then it goes overhead from the top of the cliff to the bottom of the cliff, runs through the Roseau Valley, comes up through Federation Drive into Funkole. So that's the underground line. There's something to be said about that as well, because the investment made in having an underground infrastructure speaks to resilience, right? Most of our system are overhead lines, vulnerable to vegetation issues, wind damage, climate events, and so. The underground line, what we expect from it is a much more resilient system, right? Throughout the testing and so initially, even before transmitting power, we had some issues that had to be corrected. You may have seen manhole covers open, addressing some of those issues, right? But most recently, from the outages, what we had was misoperation of protective devices. So you have at either end of the line, you have devices that are used to protect electronic devices that are used to protect the line in case there's a failure on the line. But there were some misoperations of those systems and it tripped the line. The line did not have a fault. The line is in operation as we speak. It did not have a fault, but we had some misoperations on either end. And I also spoke to the different parties. So you have one party at the a contractor at the other end, you have other contractors at the other end, and unfortunately on the two incidents we had some issues that were discovered with those protective devices.
Connection issue.
Not the physical line, not the physical connection of the line, but to the electronic devices. So what sends the signal to those electronic devices? We had some issues there, as well as some setting issues in terms of saying, hey, you should trip here instead of tripping here, and we had some of those issues, but they were discovered. And that is part of the whole testing process, commissioning process, that you discover these issues before you get into commercial operation. Thank you for the question.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner Joseph. This is an argument mentioned. Okay. Good morning, Commissioner Joseph. You made mention of the goal to have 100% renewable energy by 2030. As the island's sole electricity company, do you think that is still achievable? Because we're in 2026, 2030 is just 4 years away.
Right. So there may be a number of things hinge on getting there, but that's why I mentioned the need to go big, right? Not do 25% of the demand, aim much higher. And what the government did is aim high. And as I mentioned, they were aggressive, right? Now we just need to make things fit in and work seamlessly to be able to reach that goal. Now, whether or not we're able to achieve it, but I can say there's a good fight being put up, right? Being able to get to 70% of your demand means that you're over 50%. There's a good fight being put up for it, right? And when we when we look at what has been done, especially when you look at it from the context of an island nation, and especially in our region, I would say it's something unprecedented. No one moves from, let's say, 20% up to 70% within that space of time, right? And if you look at some of our neighboring islands, you would find that in some cases, persons are pushing to achieve 5%, right? So in terms of energy independence, we're enjoying um, we're enjoying 20 something percent now. We should to over 70% along that journey to 2030. One other thing I would say on that, given the opportunity now, is while we're aiming for that energy independence in electricity production, we also need to take care of it in terms of our mobility. Because if we depend on imported fuel to get around the country to do business, then we're still dependent on something from outside in terms of energy. A transition to electric vehicles means that we're empowering our mobility indigenously as well. So I think putting everything in context, that's something that we need to pay attention to in that drive to a sustainable energy future. But thank you for the question.
Yes, Mr. Sinat, the rate review exercise that has been conducted between DOMLEC and the IRC, that has been spoken about for quite a few months and years right now. Given the fact that the installation of the geothermal is coming through, how does that leave the consumer? Is that not huge news for the consumers of Dominica? The fact that the IRC and DOMLEC working on the review exercise, and now you're talking about geothermal, one would expect that the consumers of Dominica would feel extremely good with what is going on right now. Do you agree?
Yes, I fully agree. And most recently, as part of the process to that rate review, basically the review is at its final stage. Throughout the month of April, DOMLEC has been partnering with the IRC in public consultations. This is something we agreed on back in 2025, that we would partner on the dissemination of the information and the public consultations in getting the information out there on the rate review, right? So yes, it is something that we should be happy about. Of course, as mentioned, the impact of geothermal overall will bring lower rates to our customers.
My next question is, as we move into the transition period of geothermal, do you have the necessary trained individuals to deal with the situation where you spoke about the battery and the shortages and the outages? Do you have the necessary manpower to deal with those situations? And my next question is, did you foresee the incident as it relates to the total blackout when your company decided, well, we are going to shut down the Focally power plant, and as a result of that, everything would have collapsed?
All right. In terms of capacity building as it pertains to the transition, there has been some training that has been delivered, but training is something that you cannot say it's a touch point and I deliver training and I can turn my back. It's a continuous process, and the transition involves there are multiple aspects to it, right? You mentioned the battery energy storage system. That system was installed last year. Our team has been trained. Most recently, there was another training session just a month ago, or last month, on the system again, and our operators have been dispatching the battery, and so I wouldn't say we're fully trained or there are things, that we do not require additional training on, but we're able to operate and maintain it and dispatch it accordingly. The other part to the project that we will have responsibility for is the addition of the transmission system. Prior to this DOMLEC, we operated solely on a distribution system, right? You're adding now to our responsibilities 4 additional substations with supporting lines. So there has to be ongoing training in those areas to ensure, we have the requisite knowledge to attend to the operation and maintenance of that system. And that is something that that is ongoing. We're participating in training. There has been different aspects to the training, and so in classroom, at factories, and so it's something continuous. But I do appreciate the question, because obviously you would want to know that, with that transition, that we're able to well align and deliver reliable service. So thank you for the question. The other one, I believe, was whether or not we anticipated the outages when we